Imagine, just for a second, that you are handed the keys to a globally famous, multi-billion-dollar international brand.
Oh, that is quite the promotion.
Right, and your job is to grow that brand. Welcome millions of visitors from literally all over the world and just maintain this nonstop upbeat energy.
Sounds incredibly glamorous.
It does. But here is the catch. At the exact same time, your job also involves making sure the local storm sewers do not flood.
Ah, reality check.
Exactly. You have to make sure the sidewalks are paved and, the garbage gets picked up on time.
That is a massive balancing act.
It really is. And by the way, today's deep dive is brought to you by BusinessLink. We are unpacking this fascinating high-stakes reality of running a world-renowned destination that, well, also happens to be a hometown.
Right, it's that dual identity.
Exactly. We are looking at a masterclass in positive leadership, entrepreneurial vision, and just historic longevity. The career of Jim Diodati, the mayor of Niagara Falls since 2010.
It is a genuinely compelling profile to examine. We are pulling from a really comprehensive biographical piece on Mayor Diodati to understand the mechanics of his longevity.
Yeah, the real nuts and bolts of it.
Exactly. And just to be clear, right out of the gate, for everyone listening, our goal here isn't to endorse a political figure or, take any sides.
Right, definitely not.
We are analyzing this document impartially as a case study. We want to extract the actual mechanics of what sustained, effective community building looks like from the perspective of someone who has been at the helm for well over a decade.
Absolutely. The mission for you listening today is to really unpack the how. Like, how do you keep the momentum going year after year?
Right.
How do you actually get these massive infrastructure projects across the finish line?
Okay, let's unpack this, because there is a detail in the timeline of his career that I think perfectly sets the stage.
Oh, I know the one you mean.
Yeah. Jim Diodati was part of the under 40 class of 2004. Lots of early promise.
But then, almost 2 decades later, in 2023, he became the first ever recipient of the under 40 Alumni Impact Award.
And that is a critical detail. You see it across industries. Leaders burst onto the scene with a lot of early career momentum.
Right, a big splash.
Exactly. But translating that initial spark into sustained, tangible influence over 20 years, that requires a completely different skill set.
Yeah, it's not just a sprint.
No, it shows a trajectory that didn't just peak early and fizzle out. It compounded. It has been actively shaping the business and community landscape of the Niagara region for over 2 decades.
And to understand exactly how he built that compounding influence, we really have to look at where he started. His foundation wasn't in bureaucratic management.
Not at all.
Our sources note that he actually established, owned, and operated several successful businesses before ever entering public office.
Which changes his whole perspective.
Right. I was reading this and thinking about a startup analogy. It seems like he treats governance a bit like running a highly accountable startup, very grounded in customer service and real-world problem solving.
What's fascinating here is that there is definitely a parallel there.
Yeah.
His private sector background gave him a real frontline education in operations.
Like meeting payrolls.
Exactly, meeting payrolls, financial management. He wasn't learning economic theory from a textbook.
He was living it.
He was living the day-to-day reality of what businesses actually require to survive and expand.
Right.
And that private sector lens directly informs his action-oriented approach to the city's growth. He understands exactly what businesses need when it comes to economic development, tourism growth, and investment attraction.
I get that, but I do want to push back on that startup analogy just for a second.
Sure.
Because, a city isn't actually a startup. If a startup has a difficult user, they can just ban them. Or if the product fails, users just uninstall the app and walk away. But a mayor has captive customers. The citizens can't just uninstall their street if the snowplows don't show up.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
So how does a private sector mindset actually translate to an environment where you can't just pivot away from your core day-to-day responsibilities?
That is the exact friction point. And it is why his specific approach to customer service is so vital here.
How so?
Well, in the private sector, customer service is about retention and satisfaction, right?
Right.
In a municipality, customer service translates directly to political capital and trust. Because residents can't just, as you said, uninstall the city. They have to trust that the person managing it is actually listening to them.
Ah.
Diodati understands that private investors and local citizens both actually need the same core thing to thrive.
Which is what?
responsiveness and predictability.
Yeah.
He uses his entrepreneurial background to signal to investors that the city is, open for business, while using that customer service mindset to assure residents that their day-to-day concerns aren't just being ignored in favor of the big business side.
And he does this with a style that is incredibly visible. First elected in 2010, the text describes his approach as super energetic and constantly engaging.
Yes, very hands-on.
There is even a specific term the sources use for his vibe. They call it politainment.
It is a fascinating descriptor. It really captures his blend of high accessibility, constant optimism, and just highly visible communication.
Okay, but let's be real for a minute. Politainment sounds a little, fluffy.
I mean, I get that. It sounds like selfies.
Yeah, taking smiling selfies at ribbon cuttings, posting on social media all day. It's easy to be optimistic on a camera, but running a city is serious business.
It absolutely is.
So how does leaning so heavily into visibility actually serve the grueling day-to-day mechanics of running a government? Like, how does a selfie fix a pothole?
That is a very fair question, and it is a crucial distinction we need to make. Politainment, at least in this context, isn't just a distraction or a PR exercise.
Okay, then what is it?
It is a highly strategic communication tool. Think of it like a corporate open-door policy, but scaled up to a city of over 90,000 people.
That is a big open door.
Right. Traditionally, the office of the mayor can feel really isolated. Decisions are debated behind closed doors, and the public only hears about the final, sanitized outcome.
Which usually makes people pretty suspicious.
Exactly. By being hypervisible, operating essentially in the town square rather than the boardroom, he brings residents, businesses, and stakeholders directly into the conversation about the city's future.
So it's about making the public feel like they are part of the process, rather than just the recipients of some policy from on high.
Precisely, and that answers your question about how it fixes a pothole. It doesn't physically fill the hole, but it builds the political capital required to, say, raise the funds to pave the entire street. When people feel connected to the leadership, they are much more willing to endure the friction of municipal progress.
Wow, yeah, and you would need a massive reservoir of that political capital when you are trying to execute complex, multi-billion-dollar initiatives, things that are going to disrupt the city for years before they are completed.
You absolutely do.
Which brings us perfectly to the scale of what we were talking about here. He isn't just fixing potholes, he is trying to fundamentally alter the DNA of the region.
Let's look at the big three initiatives he has championed.
Yes, these are massive.
First, the persistent advocacy for expanded JEGO train service for regional connectivity.
Critical for commuters and tourists.
Right. Second, the staggering $3.6 billion South Niagara Hospital project.
$3.6 billion.
Yeah, billion. And third, the establishment of the University of Niagara Falls, Canada, right in the downtown core.
It is a totally revitalized downtown vision. But here's the thing. A municipal mayor doesn't just write a check for a $3.6 billion hospital.
No, they certainly do not.
That requires the provincial government. So what is the actual mechanism for getting these mega projects done?
Relentless, aligned advocacy over a very, very long period. A mayor cannot unilaterally build a regional transit line or a provincial hospital.
Right.
What a mayor can do is unite the city council, local businesses, and regional stakeholders into a single, undeniable voice that lobbies the higher levels of government.
So you have to be totally unified.
Exactly. It requires demonstrating that the city has the infrastructure, the zoning, and the unified political will to support these massive investments. If a city is fractured, the province won't invest billions of dollars there.
And we are seeing that unified advocacy pay off right now. As we look at the landscape in early 2026, these aren't just proposals anymore.
No, they are hitting critical milestones.
Right. The South Niagara Hospital recently celebrated its topping off, meaning the final structural beams are actually in place for a 12-story facility.
Which is huge.
Meanwhile, the University of Niagara Falls, Canada is actively launching advanced programs in digital media and artificial intelligence.
Which is just a staggering transformation for the downtown core.
But, here's where it gets really interesting to me. It raises a thought about identity.
Okay.
Niagara Falls is arguably the most famous global tourism icon in the country. Waterfalls, casinos, entertainment. By pushing for a massive hospital and a university focused on AI, is he essentially trying to rewrite the city's economic DNA? Is he pivoting away from the tourism?
Well, he isn't rewriting it, he is bridging it.
Bridging it.
Yes. The goal isn't to replace the tourism identity. That is a massive, incredibly lucrative economic engine.
Obviously.
The goal is to build a firewall of diversification around it. A modern city is incredibly vulnerable if it relies entirely on a single industry.
Makes sense.
The establishment of the university, for example, is a highly calculated mechanism. It brings young, year-round student energy to a downtown core that historically relied just on seasonal tourist traffic.
Right. It fills in the off-season.
Exactly. And it creates a talent pipeline, so local kids don't have to leave for Toronto to study tech. It bridges the gap between a traditional hospitality economy and a resilient, high-tech economy.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about creating year-round stability, which honestly highlights the absolute central tension of leading a place like Niagara Falls.
The balancing act.
Right. You are dealing with an international bucket list destination, but it is also a functional hometown where residents need to drop their kids off at school, go to the hospital, and get to work without sitting in 2 hours of tourist traffic.
It is an incredible balancing act. Every single day, municipal leadership in a city like this involves negotiating the macro against the micro.
Global versus local.
Yes, you are constantly balancing visitor demands and global visibility against residential livability, housing, and infrastructure pressures.
We see that macro ambition really clearly with his Destination Niagara strategy.
Oh, definitely.
Our sources detail this as a major provincial municipal partnership with a truly wild goal. They want to literally double the city's economic impact by 2030.
It is hugely ambitious.
They're talking about major new attractions and revitalizing spectacular historic landmarks like the Toronto Power Generating Station. It is glamorous, visionary stuff.
The fun part of city planning.
Exactly. But then when you look at the actual unsexy realities of governing, you see his 2026 budget.
Right.
There is a massive focus on cybersecurity, stabilizing storm sewers, and fixing sidewalks. It is just a wild juxtaposition to me.
It really is.
1 hour, you are in a meeting planning how to revitalize a historic power station, and the next, you are looking at spreadsheets to fund storm sewer repairs.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this juxtaposition is basically the fundamental equation of his leadership. The glitz is what funds the grit.
The glitz funds the grit. I like that.
Global tourists do not care about the local storm sewers, right?
No, not at all.
But the residents absolutely do. However, the residents also want the economic benefits, the low taxes, and the jobs that the global tourists provide.
Right. They want the upside without the hassle.
Exactly. But they don't want that tourism to overwhelm their housing markets or crumble their local infrastructure. So a successful mayor has to harmonize these two opposing forces.
You need the soaring vision of that Destination Niagara strategy to drive the revenue into the city.
Yes, but you must have the absolute operational discipline to invest that revenue into cybersecurity and sidewalks. If the glamorous side fails, the city goes broke. If the unsexy infrastructure fails, the hometown ceases to function.
The pressure of managing that constant friction, the demands of the global market versus the demands of the local taxpayer, I mean, it has to take an immense toll. It's an endurance test day in and day out.
It absolutely is.
And that brings us to a part of the Diodati profile that forces us to look beyond the policies and the budgets. Because the pressure cooker of municipal leadership is hard enough, but he had to navigate it while facing unimaginable personal and global crises.
Yes. The longevity of his tenure hasn't just been a smooth ride of continuous growth. It has been forged through profound, unprecedented disruption.
Right. During a previous term, right in the thick of managing these massive infrastructure files, he was diagnosed with Hodgkin lymphoma.
A very serious diagnosis.
And he underwent extensive chemotherapy. When you read something like that, you really have to pause and take a step back.
It puts everything in perspective.
It does. We talk about the mechanics of leadership, but the sheer human toll of navigating the grueling, exhausting reality of cancer treatments while still bearing the weight of a city's leadership, it's hard to fathom.
It is incredibly rare. The sources note that he actually continued to fulfill his mayoral duties throughout his treatment.
Wow.
He obviously couldn't do it alone. He relied heavily on his family, his medical team, and the broader community infrastructure he had built. But he stayed at the helm.
That is intense.
It speaks volumes about the culture of the team he built around him at City Hall, that the government could continue functioning while its highly visible leader was fighting a deeply personal battle.
And the timing of this is just brutal, because almost immediately following his personal health crisis, the city was hit with the catastrophic disruption of the COVID-19 pandemic.
And we really have to consider the specific existential dread that a city like Niagara Falls faced in early 2020.
Right, because of what their economy is based on.
Exactly. This is an economy entirely driven by people crossing international borders, gathering in large groups, staying in hotels, and visiting attractions.
Right.
When a global lockdown is mandated, for a city like that, it isn't just an economic slowdown. It is a legally mandated immediate halt to their entire way of life.
The entire economic engine was essentially turned off overnight. How do you even begin to lead through that?
Well, it requires a massive pivot. You have to move from visionary growth to intense crisis management.
Just survival mode.
Pretty much. It was about securing emergency funding, communicating constantly with a terrified public, and trying desperately to preserve the foundational businesses so that there would be something left to rebuild when the pandemic eventually ended.
Oh. And that politainment communication style we discussed earlier.
Yes. This is where it became a lifeline.
Because he already had the audience.
Exactly. Having a well-established, highly visible channel to speak directly to the residents was crucial for maintaining calm and compliance during an incredibly dark time.
And clearly the community trusted that stewardship, because as they emerged from the worst of the pandemic in 2022 and he stepped into his campaign for a fourth term, his message to the city wasn't about flashy new promises.
No, it was very grounded.
The message was simply, let's finish what we started. And that is a brilliant piece of strategic messaging. After the collective trauma of the pandemic and, the public awareness of his own health crisis, the voters weren't looking for disruption.
No, they wanted stability. They were looking for stability. Let's finish what we started is a powerful signal of continuity and recovery.
Yeah.
It reassured the public that the big dreams, the multi-billion-dollar hospital, the new university, the economic diversification, they weren't abandoned during the crisis. It signaled that the foundation survived and the momentum was returning.
And that momentum is exactly where we find ourselves today. Because looking ahead, Jim stands on the cusp of making significant history. As he approaches a potential fifth term in 2026, he is positioned to become the longest-serving mayor in the history of Niagara Falls.
Which forces us to critically evaluate what endurance actually means in public office.
How do you mean?
Well, we consume politics so often as a series of quick wins, viral moments, or dramatic elections.
Right, very short attention spans.
But municipal success, the kind that actually changes the trajectory of a region, is about institutional memory. It is the willingness to make hard, unpopular decisions today, knowing that the payoff won't happen until long after the next election cycle.
Like tearing up a main artery to fix an underground pipe.
Exactly. It is the stamina to advocate for a hospital for over a decade before a single shovel hits the dirt. Building trust isn't a single event. It is an iterative process tested year after year, crisis after crisis.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Whether you are managing a team, running a business, or just living in a city and wondering why things happen the way they do.
Yeah.
I think the core takeaway from this profile is that sustained leadership is a complex endurance test. It is a lived experience.
Absolutely.
It requires the towering, glamorous ambition to double an economy by 2030, but it equally requires the grounded, unsexy stewardship to make sure the sidewalks are safe. It blends visibility, vulnerability, ambition, and stewardship.
It is about recognizing that the invisible infrastructure, whether that is a storm sewer in your hometown or the operational processes in your own company, is what actually allows the visionary projects to exist.
That is so true.
It is a profound balance. And when you look at a case study like this, where a leader and a city are intertwined for this long, navigating through literal life and death crises and massive economic transformations, it leaves us with an important question for you to consider on your own. When you look at your own hometown or the organizations you're a part of, does a long-serving leader ultimately shape the identity of the place they govern? Or does the unique, demanding nature of that environment ultimately shape the leader?
Wow. That is a phenomenal question to leave off on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take a look at the invisible infrastructure around you this week. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we will catch you next time.